I
guys.
I am seeing
Hello.
names that I have not seen and I don't know
I am
when.
seeing names that I have not seen and I don't know when.
It is a full house, you guys. But I think I should just reveal because you already know she's here. Come on board, Mary.
Yay! Hi. Ah.
I was gonna try to do it like big reveal. I'm like, everybody knows you're here.
I mean, okay, so I didn't tell you this when we were talking before. So I put on a shirt, which I thought was a good idea, and I put it on backwards, and I love it. This is backwards. Look. I put it on and I was like, oh my God. I mean, it looked, it felt funny on the neck because but I was like, oh, it's sort of a tunic. I'm not sure that I would wear it out, but like,
I do like it. I do like the front part of it. It's kind of classy.
yeah, it's cool. And the other thing, just really quick. Oh, sorry, Steph, there's so much to talk about though. Anyway, we didn't get to this part, but I have entered a new phase of my life. I went to the optometrist and I need readers. Yeah. So I got these.
Oh,
What do you think about that?
they are very cute. I love them. I also went to the optometrist and need to buy new progressives because I've gotten a little bit blinder.
I mean, I hadn't gotten new glasses in a long time. These are the other ones. I like these a lot. And I got the frames like used. Okay, I have my contacts in, so I can't see anything.
Oh,
So I
those are
can't
really
even.
cute. Those are very cute.
I like them too. I got them used on a resale site and they're pretty bent. So I need to get them fixed. But anyway, so I feel I chose glasses that are like academic-y. Like this is almost annoying. It's like, okay, you're in grad school. Like we know.
Just make your hair a little crazy.
Exactly.
Stick a pen in there.
Exactly. Here, look, I'm at my desk. It's like, oh yeah, actually, here I need this. I need a pencil there and another one there that I forgot I had, you know? Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Anyway.
Well, so I planned nothing today other than if we have time, I know you're on a time frame today. If we have time, I have a thing to show you and the gang, and like just a brief thing to say about it. But it's your day, my friend.
I want to hear about it. I want to hear about it. I'm just trying. Let me pop out this chat so I can watch. Okay. Sorry. No, I'm sorry. This is my problem, not yours. Okay, here we go. Okay, I got it.
So first of all, because we're always bitching about the weather, what's it like in Texas right now?
Okay. I know that it is like totally ridiculous and almost embarrassing to be like, it's so hot. Hey everybody, oh my God. It's so hot, it's just the heat. But I'm gonna just say it because I can say I hate it. I hate it. I knew I would. I almost didn't apply here because I knew I would hate it. And it's bad. And Eric and we were so enchanted with Austin, right? Like immediately in the neighborhood. We're in Hyde Park neighborhood, and it's so nice. And there's so much I love about Austin. Like, oh my God, the flowers, the trees, it's amazing. But we kind of, after it was like, it was like in the 90s a couple times last week. And it's really nice right now, but it is November 21st and it will be 86 tomorrow. Or no, yeah. 82. And I miss autumn. I really, really miss it. And so we were like super into Austin. And then after a while we were like, no, like I'm going to come
leaves
here.
on the trees.
I really do. And it's my friend Charbrian, Charbrian. She were texting and it's snowing today in Chicago. And I'm just like, man. Anyway, yeah. So that is, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here in the time that I must be here. And then I'm going to back home, But
yeah. And JB just said Austin is the best of Texas. I do agree with that. I love Austin. But yes, for me, it was great to visit. I didn't want to live there for any length of time. So I get it. But think about this. You're going to have some warm holidays.
It's true. And like the Santa, like there is Christmas stuff being put out, and
it's weird.
I was weird because I was thinking about like California, and I've been in California around Christmas time, and it's like the Santa Claus with the sunglasses on. But this is not California. This is not like amazing West
Well,
Coast West man.
yeah, but think about it, like in Australia. Think about the
Oh,
deserty, like scrubby parts of Australia, the inner part of Australia. It's like you're
sorry.
spending the holidays in the inner part of Australia. So okay.
I'm in the outback. Great, great. Yeah.
Christmas in Florida, where you can sweat your way through, dancing under the Christmas tree.
It's not, I don't know how people do it. I mean, Eric's like, we live in Mexico. Like, it's just like weird borderland, like imperialist issues that like make us, like living officially in Texas, but like we're, we're deep in this, we're in South America. Anyway, it's totally fine. I'm fine, but I'm excited that it's cooler.
Well, how is school? I mean, tell us. I know that some names I haven't seen in a while, I know have advanced education. But
Oh,
for those of us that don't, I mean, like, what is it like? Tell us everything.
oh my God. It's really good to be here. And I miss you all. I mean, really all the time. And I also, yes, anyway. Okay. Those are my issues about like not, anyway. Okay. Okay. I'm just going to answer your question. Okay. Here's what it's like. It is among the hardest things I've ever done, without a doubt. UT Austin it's a good school. And the reason that it is that way is because they are just like, oh, no, you will do this and you will do this and you'll do this. I mean, okay. So what is really fun to tell you about and kind of answers the question in a quilty way is that I have 3 papers due. I mean, there's assignments all the time that I have to do. And by the way, oh my God, I didn't really know because it wasn't anywhere in what I read about this place. I didn't really know that I'd get grades. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I went to art school for my master's degree and it was pass fail. But it's like, well, duh. Like you got an A on your painting or like you got a C. Like that doesn't really work. And I was doing writing, which is the same way. It's like your play sucked, like you get a B or you're a D. But here, I mean, it's 100% point thing and you are graded. And I was like, oh, damn. And if I don't have a 3.0, a minimum 3.0, I lose my scholarship. And so like 3.0, like, is that like a low B, high C? I'm not sure. But like, I realized that I'd be graded on everything. And I was like, so doing fine. I've got like 94% so far, which is good.
Oh,
But
that's
like,
awesome.
it's good. It's good because this is what I'm here to do. I work so hard on all these things, it's like, I'm really excited to be here. But anyways, so one of the classes writing about contemporary art is just wait for 50% of your grade is attendance. I have almost perfect attendance, but I missed one class. And 50% of your grade is your final paper. 50%. So it's like, okay. Oh, and I can show you. Okay, so I have 3 papers due. Hang on. I have binders for everything. Hang on.
Oh my, of course you do.
I do. Of course I do. Okay. Oh my God, this is very exciting. Okay, hang on. Okay. So figuring this out has been a journey. And so here's what I'm going to do for my 3 papers. Okay, I'm sorry, there's that saw. Can you hear that? Okay, good. So yes, Jill, exactly. I'm not even looking at the chat because like that's all I'll do. Okay. So I have 3 classes. The first one is Introduction to Readings in American Studies. Okay. The readings, we do a book a week. I mean, a book a week plus like you're in charge of like discussion questions sometimes, and sometimes there's papers due. That class is very difficult. It's like a 393, like out of 400, like 400 is like your dissertation class, code or whatever. This is a 393 class. It's really intense. So for that class, for my final paper, this is not a nice, I'm going to show you. I have to make graphics for all my binders because I have to tell them apart and like they have to have like I'm visual, So this has a bad word on it. This has a bad word on it. So, okay. Going descent. Mary takes on Hawaiian quilts, bitches. Fight me. Because here's the thing, we had to turn in this abstract for our like final paper, and I was like, I want to talk about the historiography. I'm starting to learn the words that I used to hate. I was like, oh, it's so stupid, this academic stuff, and a lot of academic words are just ridiculous. But historiography, it's true. This is what I've wanted to do, is like write a new history of of write the new inclusive, like accurate history of quilts in America, right?
Right.
So I'm like pitching that in my abstract, and my professor's like, okay, that's a little broad. You need to, God, you need to focus. And so I was like, you're right. I'm going to focus on Hawaiian quilts because the history of Hawaii and like that whole thing is like extremely complicated. And Hawaiian quilts, it's kind of like African American quilts, right? Like there's lots of kinds of quilts, and Hawaiian quilts, as we know them, are very distinct. They're very distinctive and awesome. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to learn about it, so I started researching it. This is my research binder.
Oh, and I'm gonna,
dude, I'm so into this binder. I love it so much. Oh, and look at this. Okay, so I read.
If you need any partners for your research trip, we have all volunteered to contribute.
Exactly. Mike and Marissa McCormick have a timeshare down there. So I was like, okay. So I read about how to organize research, and there is a lot to be said for the index card system. I know, but I'm telling you, the index card system is working for me. Oh, look at that.
Oh.
It's in all my books. So I'm doing that. So I'm doing the Hawaiian quilts for intro to readings. The class I told you about, the writing about contemporary art class, which is in the art history department. That's my elective this semester. That one that I have to nail. Otherwise, like, I don't know what will happen to me because it's 50% of my grade. So I'm going to write about, it's going to be called Strange Bedfellows, Art Quilts and Art Criticism. Basically, I'm going to talk about why I was going to talk about like modern quilts, but then I was like, I want to try to publish this one day, and I just can't deal with the controversy. I'm not ready for like round 2 of all that. But like, why is it that art critics like Art Forum or Art in America, why don't these critics go and review art quilts? Or
why indeed?
Why don't they go to QuiltCon? I mean, you're looking at these quilts, you're like, oh my God, what, they should be written up, why? And the reasons why, as far as, I feel so far, is number one, it's quilt show. Like, please, we're not going there. And the second problem is that maybe like, screw those art critics. We don't need their opinion and we don't want it. And like, who cares anyway? So that's important for our perspective. Is like, I don't care what you think, and please get out of our world, with your stupid art world stuff.
Right.
But the other thing is, and this was talked about a couple times, like back in the 80s, I mean, forgive me, and I mean, this is completely objective, quilt makers like kind of can't take it sometimes because we don't have a criticism. We don't have that in the world of quilts. Yeah. We don't have critiques.
Yeah. Fine arts have critiques. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It would be so crazy to like publish some review like that dissed in any way somebody's work at a quilt show, because oh my God, it would be a scandal if you like were like, I'm not saying this for God's sakes, like Carson Converse's latest work, is like lacking in blah blah blah, which
yeah. It's one thing to say like, oh, you hand sewed or machine sewed blah blah blah, the quilt police type stuff. It's another thing entirely to be told you're derivative and you're
yes, exactly. Oh my God, I have to write about that. Has to go in there because that was like the last time, like the one time that somebody was like, I'm going to critique like the work, and that was, we know how that went. That's great. I didn't even think about that. The derivative scandal.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. And I mean, it's just like take the quilter out of it and just, saying as an artist. Yeah. It's a, we've been subjected to all kinds of horrors, but
yeah.
Big A art versus little A art, and nah.
Yeah. And it's like, does it matter? Who cares? But like that, like the uncovering thing, sorry. It's like, there are opportunities that like some people really want out of the art world. Some quilters really want. And like, if they, if your work gets a mention in Art Forum, you're right, exactly. If you happen to get like a mention in Art Forum, it's not that I'm like, we need their approbation. Like we need the art world to be like, loving us. Like, I don't care. But also that's a kind of a naive thing to say, because some people would super benefit from some review. Exactly, Kate. Exactly. It's like opportunities and grants and all kinds of things could come from that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's relative. It's valid to look at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one. This is very exciting. Okay, so I pitched an article. I think we talked about this last time I was on. I think I was working on it, but quilts made by enslaved people. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think I showed somewhere. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But
I think you mentioned this to me when we talked a while back.
yeah. Okay. So, okay, I'll try to make this brief. So the last class is intro to. By the way, I'll watch this back to see like what folks are saying because
Okay.
I'm not even looking at the chat because I'm sure people
Yeah,
are like
there's
saying,
lots of good stuff, but I don't want to like read comments because I know you got you got places to be.
I got to do this interview because I applied for this travel grant to go study Bertha back again in Louisiana. It might be my dissertation. I'm not sure, but anyways.
Ooh.
So the third class is U.S. Cultural History to 1865. Next semester, I take U.S. Cultural History since 1865. Seems to make sense. Right?
Okay.
Um, America's really complicated and not always
A little
awesome.
bit.
That's what I've learned.
A
Like
little
that's,
bit.
I mean, yeah, and also, the Native Americans are complicated, and like colonialism is complicated, and I mean, it's just all a mess. Human beings,
Yeah, we're
it's like
messy. Yeah, we're messy.
messy. It's
Yeah.
messy, and that is the truth. It's not all bad, and it's not all good. And I've gotten an education, that is for sure. So I'm looking at these quilts made by enslaved women, and so the Pieceworks article will come out in the summer. It was going to come out in the spring. I had to rewrite it. I mean, it was going to be this next issue, but I had to rewrite it because I was like sharing my opinion. And Pat, the editor, she's like, "Okay, love it. Maybe."
Less opinion, more fact.
She's like more circumspect. I was like, God, that's a great word. I was like, okay, so I had to rewrite it, so it'll be next in this
That's
summer.
exciting, though. That is a magazine that I subscribe to. Long time.
Yes, it is so good, and I mean, I'm so happy to be like, yeah. I mean, that's awesome. I have great respect for that magazine, and they put out the call for like 19th century, textile stuff, and I was like, well, in the 19th century, somebody ought to be talking about quilts made by enslaved people in the 19th century. Like, hello, like that would be a good thing. So I pitched it, and anyway, so as I was looking, what I've learned is a lot, but at the very core of it, what I'm going to write about for this class. Oh, it's called Captive in the Garden.
Oh, okay.
I don't have my subtitle yet, but what I'm writing about and what I really hope of all these things, what I hope to make like a thing that lives elsewhere. There is a scholar who said, misunderstandings about African American quilts began during slavery. And the reason that happened is because like there's two kinds of quilts that were made in antebellum America by enslaved people. There were quilts made in the big house, and the slaves were sewing them most of the time, right? Like they were working on them. There were slave seamstresses. This is the terminology that's used. I use enslaved people, like students, slaves, workers. Like this is anyway. I know that it's this terminology is a sensitive thing, but so slave made quilts made by enslaved people, by enslaved women. There's these two kinds. There's the kinds that were made in the big house, as I said, which were chintz confections, right? These extraordinary look at this.
Yeah, I was gonna say what the things you got there are not looking familiar to me, and I want to like just look in that book.
Oh yeah. I mean, this one at the Met is fairly famous, but and so few quilts that were made at this time are attributed, of course, to the enslaved people who worked on them. But look, this is at the freaking Smithsonian. But so I want to. So I'm going to focus on. And by the way, and the quilts made by enslaved people for their own use looked so different because when you think about it, they couldn't have scissors. Gee, I wonder why. They couldn't have sharp. I mean, all of the tools that you need to make a beautiful or like intricate or like Euro-American style chintz quilt, those are in the plantation mistress's home. Right. And if you in the slave seamstress, who was this like, you were worth more. Okay. If you could sew, literally worth more. It's documentation all day about this. If all you did your whole life was sew and tailor and mend and quilt, I reckon you'd be real good at it. So these chintz quilts and these broderie purse quilts, they are flawless. And a lot of times it was the slaves making them. So, but then when they made quilts for themselves, you had rags to work with. You had no time. You had to do it at night. I mean, there are literal like narratives. This is all verifiable. It's not speculation. After your chores were done, you could make quilts. In Georgia, the temperatures got really low in the wintertime. You needed quilts. These were rags. They were old clothes, whatever. So you had to do what you had to do. So these differences in African American quilts and white folks quilts or Euro American quilts, this is, and we talked about it before, Steph, and you have too.
Oh yeah,
It's
absolutely.
time and material. This is not about skill or anything. Like, oh my God. And my main thesis, and then I can stop talking, but the main thesis, or one of them, is, and I am gonna say that any quilt, all quilts made in a slaveholding state, which is every state except Vermont, all quilts made in slaveholding states before emancipation were made with slave labor, either directly or indirectly, because all of the fabric came from a system of labor that involved slave labor. Planting cotton, harvesting cotton, producing cotton, weaving the cotton. It's all, you can't extract slave labor from quilts made before 1863. Five?
Yep.
Yeah. You can't. And so it's like, it's time to talk about that. And here's the thing too, and I'm going to throw a little shade. I am so tired of going to AQSG and listening to these very lovely ladies talk about chintz quilts or any pre-emancipation antebellum quilts and never mentioning slavery. I am so done with it. It's like, how many, I'm not sorry. How many papers can we have about chintz quilts and broderie purse quilts made in, I don't know, 1835 in South Carolina that do not even, the word slavery is like, are you kidding? And it's got to change. I'm so tired of it. And other people are too. And I know you are. And I know many of the people who, hang out around here are like, yeah, I mean, that just makes sense, right? So anyway, sorry, that's my little soapbox. But it's really,
I love all that. I'm so excited. Okay. I wish we could talk about every single thing. Like, I want to like put my arms around your binders and just read them, and but we have been doing our own little like mini grad school here, because we have looked at some of this stuff, and we read the chintz book by MacIver Percival, and you've got all the stuff about that, and then marry that with what we do know, and hopefully what you're going to uncover. I think it's good data. Like, it's what we need. It's what we've been craving. So
it's got to happen, right? And yeah, I mean, oh my God, there's so many great seed to bed. Oh, Yakama, Yakama? Oh my God, from seed to bed. Is that you? Is that that's brilliant?
Yeah, from the cotton seed to the bed. Yeah,
absolutely. And is that your quote, or is that from? Because it's in quotes, but that's brilliant. And I want to put this in here, but credit the right person.
Yakama, let us
know what I
know
mean?
what
Like,
that's from.
Genius. Yeah, please. Okay. Anyway.
Or is that the words of Jean Adey?
What's that?
Is that her words? So, sorry, I forget and call people by their real names sometimes.
Okay, got it.
I usually don't have this many people here. You are quite the draw. I really need you when my subscriber numbers plummet.
I mean, that's one thing that, I mean, God bless you. It's so hard to do what you do.
It's fun. It's fun. I always tell the gang, like, I need this, Mondays and Thursdays, like, this is, and then, Jill and I do Tuesday nights, and this is good for our souls. You never know what's going to happen. It's always, it's always crazy. It's something, the other day I had like an off day, and I'm sure everybody who was here was like, what's up, cake?
Yeah.
But it is all good. And yes, all the things people are posting are so great.
Okay. This is good. Reading, playing with words. Yes. Okay. You're playing with words. Well, okay.
So this is a Yakamo original. I love it.
From seed to bed, Yakamo. Okay. Hello. Like binder. Hang on. I mean, that's really good. And I don't like, I'm not just going to lift it from seed to bed. It's really great.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, you guys, Mod Art has just posted something good. Yeah, you got to rewatch this for the
oh,
the
I will.
chat.
Oh, no, and I meant that when I said it because I mean, this is why Quilt Nerd and, the community is like, it's incredible. And I want to say, without a doubt, without a doubt, Quilt Nerd was like that particular thing. I mean, all of the community, all of the stuff that has come from it, like that show. I mean, what we did every week, twice a week, Cake. Holy shit. Like, if I didn't, it's so valuable
What you
doing
did,
that project.
I was just a
No,
voice in
no,
the background.
we all did. I mean, because if I was
But
talking to
yes,
nobody, I would have done it.
I know. It
You
was
know,
it the yes, absolutely.
dude, if this community of people knows like a lot of stuff, like it's Quilt Nerd, it's your show, it's people like contributing to the community, like Jill, like coming and all the people with AQSG at this point, but like, and other things. But the education, that was an education. That was an exploration and an education that when I am in these classes, I'm talking about contemporary art. These are art history people, they're art
Yeah.
like historian, whatever. And I'm just like, Miriam Shapiro, and it's all Quilt Nerd all the way
Well,
down.
I mean, that's the beautiful thing because I think that yes, here and on Quilt Nerding and in the good old days of Quilt
Yes,
Nerd, like we
yes,
looked at things in this like very big picture. I don't think that we ever just were content to say like, oh, let's look at how pretty this is. I mean, sometimes that's part of the conversation, but I think
yeah. We were
the bigger picture.
we were fearless and like just like what's out there, what's that about? And there were absolutely times on the show that it was like I was learning in real time the whole time, but there were times that like stuff came up and I was like, like how do I feel about that? I don't know about that. And trying to like process information about quilts that was uncomfortable or that was like different from what I knew, you know what I mean? Like and like how cool is that? Like the only issue you ever run into is when you're just like you've made up your mind about something, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I always feel like I don't want to say like I know everything about quilts like that. Oh boy, that's a comment. But I feel like I have been exposed to a lot, and I continue like I mean, you just be curious. Like I think that's the most important part of learning is being curious. And just when I think that like I got a handle on like the broad brushstrokes,
Yeah, yeah.
something comes up, and I'm
It's
like,
no.
you know, and it's such a good education, and I mean. Oh, you and I know you and I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours.
Well, yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, the circle back around with all of the social aspects of quilting, and feminism, and the work of the hands and all that stuff, and then you look at the things that get talked about in like the big A art world.
Great.
These are the conversations they should be having, and they should include us. And I mean, Mod Art recently has a great opportunity in it's the Schweinfurth, right? Mod Art. I'm drawing a complete blank. I'm sorry. And I think she just mentioned it. She's got a quilt in this fabulous show, and it's
Oh
like
yeah.
these like folk art centers, textile centers. These are the places I feel like are hopefully helping us bridge the gap. I
Mhm.
don't know.
Yeah,
I feel
yeah.
really hopeful about the future of art and quilts having more of a place there. But that's maybe just because that's my opinion and that's where I'm coming from.
Well, but, I mean, but it's so valuable because like, I mean, in all of the stuff I'm doing, like that question does have to be there. And it had to be there with that paper too. Joanna Evans with Uncovering, she was like, make sure you're answering the who cares question, like who cares about this stuff? And it's like what you're saying is so important. And the who cares question is like, a couple things. Like number one, art and craft were not separate until like 250 years ago, which is, talking about that in the paper. It's like it's a relatively new thing to separate art from craft. It used to all just be art. Anything that didn't come from nature was art. It was artisans making that, whatever. So that all happened because of this, money basically. Because like the real fancy royal folks were like trying to distance themselves from the commoners, and so they're like, this art is worth more. I mean, it's literally happened, right? We know that it literally happened that way. And that's the comment I make, that's I'm art craft non-binary, right? I'm art craft
Yes.
non-binary. It's a binary that shouldn't exist. And it's locked out a lot of people from stuff. And so to talk about, quilts having more of a presence in the art world, it's toward that. It's like, look, this binary thing, it doesn't make sense, and it's
Mhm.
relatively new. It's not always been that way, so like, let's like fix it. And the other thing is that, yeah, opportunities, that the art world is so rich. It has so much money. It's so powerful. It can make or break people. And so
Mhm.
it does matter if we're in that world or not. You don't have to be. You can tell everybody, a person can tell, the art world to like go like suck an egg or whatever. But some people would want to be in that, and being locked out of it sucks for them. So it's like, these conversations really are important about quilts in the art world. Yeah, I think.
So Sherlock has an interesting question, which I do want
Yeah,
to read.
yeah,
Darn it,
please.
Sherlock, being a smarty ass, smarty pants. So
Amazing,
besides
Sherlock. Beautiful.
besides economic opportunities, what do quilters get out of being considered art? No, don't apologize.
It's good. It's good.
um,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's like, from quilter to quilter. I mean, it's like a case by case basis, but I think I mean, that approbation, even if it's
yeah.
not about money, that just like, because maybe the woman you love so much. Oh my God, you gave me the book. Joyce Scott. No, not Joyce Scott.
Oh,
Um,
Joy Scott's mother, Elizabeth Halford
Joyce
Scott.
Scott's mom. Yeah, 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 exactly. It's like, you admire her so much, and she was in the art world, and it's like, for the art world who loved her work to be like, Stephanie Capsdyke, hell yeah, we want to give you a show.
Hmm.
That is so valuable, I would imagine, as an artist. So
Hmm.
like that, like, blessing from the art world that
Yeah,
also recognizes
that
her work.
acknowledgement. Yeah.
Maybe, and I don't want to put this on you. I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think it could, that could be true for some people, right?
Yes. Yes. Affirmation, acceptance. Yes, absolutely. I'll be honest. For me, it's about equality.
Mm, that is a
Because I when I and I had like that real quick discussion about this thing I'm working on.
yes.
And for me, it's about I mentioned two people I went to high school with. One, it continues to be a very good friend. The other one, I just I know socially. I connected with him on Facebook. They're both white men. One of them has like been on morning shows. He's like a great big artist. Um, we all three of us went to art school. We all three of us toil and work very hard. And we all three have really different outcomes. And there are similarities in our work
Mhm.
that I think cannot be denied. And
Mm,
there's
mm,
so much that's so unfair about the art world. And I mean, for example, you mentioned you were being surprised at, grades because in art school, it's like pass or fail. I learned that like the end of first semester when I was in my undergrad and I was going to art school, but I was at a liberal arts university and I had an academic scholarship. And so I had to write this paper at the
mm,
end of the semester, basically groveling to keep my scholarship and explain
mm,
to
mm,
them why these art foundation classes did not jive well with ABCD
mm.
because
Oh, yeah. Oh.
and I still had to take classes like English and science and stuff like that, and I aced those classes. But art is not, it's objective, it's not subjective. And I mean, you're coming from writing, creative writing, you understand this. So long story short, what I'm trying to say is art is one of those things where it is not a meritocracy. The whole world's not a meritocracy, but especially in art. And I demand that equality. So
Finding equality, like, cool. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, really,
That's
that's
the
what it's
time.
about for me. But I think it's a good point. It depends on the artist slash quilter. And I mean, sure, I think a lot of quilters would just be like, I just want to make quilts, and maybe I want to make
Oh,
a statement
yeah.
with my quilts, but I don't need this art stuff,
Totally valid. I
and
mean,
that's
fully
okay.
completely valid. Oh yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, it's I mean, I don't know. I think you were saying about art and how to grade it or not. I mean, it is true with writing. And I was just thinking, you made me think about like there is syntax, there is grammar, there is like, and you have to know those rules and master them before you can break them. You can break them, but
Mhm.
like you can't just have a lot of typos. Like you have to be like, this is the typo that I'm making because or whatever. I mean,
Right.
that's really
Hmm.
like, and the same thing with the work that you do. It's like if your stitches are all messed up and your stuff doesn't hold together, well, that's a problem. So there are technical things that are gradable, you could say, but in terms of interpretation, like it's like I didn't like it, so I'm gonna give it a B. It
Hmm.
really becomes about like, is this successful? Is this doing what the author or the artist wanted to do?
Exactly. Yeah. And even further, what if you're the only one that the artist's intent did not like click with? What if 100 people could look at this piece of work and get what I as the artist wanted to communicate, but you as the person judging me did not? Like, you don't,
Did
I mean,
you?
you have metrics. I know what you're talking about. Like, did you answer the question? Did you?
Right, right.
But sometimes the question does not fit into a rubric,
Yep. Have
and
you ever
that's
had a piece like have you made a piece that just that you felt was very successful and like answered the question that you or completed your question, you know what I mean, like that you were satisfied with on
mhm.
whatever level, that like didn't, in art school or otherwise,
Oh
where people just didn't get it, that people just didn't get it really?
oh,
Can you
yeah,
talk
over.
about?
Oh my god. Wow. Oh, thank you. Who is this?
Yay, Perry Bird. Perry Bird.
Perry
I've remembered
Bird.
him.
Hello. And by the way, I think my little thing was not popping up all the time. So thank you to people who are resubbing. I love you. Bless your heart. And hopefully you're getting your little dancing things, Wilma Flintstone and all that. I don't do the quilting kitty, Marianne. I do Wilma Flintstone and Dancing Butterick and
I'm doing
um. So one question. Sorry, I was trying. I'm listening to you and trying to watch the questions because they're you
yeah,
guys,
that's what
you bunch
I'm
of
doing.
smarty pantses, you guys with all your great questions. Yakamo actually brought up one that I think is really interesting, and
Yeah.
it's in Big A art world. What about when you have the artist is not making the art?
Yes, yes. Like the studio model or whatever.
Yes, and I mean, what about that? Isn't I mean, she said, how is that different from engaging enslaved people? Artist
Yeah,
apprentices generally do get paid. Sometimes they don't, though. Sometimes they are
but
working
they're there
for
willingly.
the
Yeah,
experience or the exposure. And oh
I would
my,
say they could be exploited for sure, but
yes,
they're not.
yes,
They're not gonna face violence if they leave.
yeah,
Like that. I would say that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would say art apprentices or any kind of studio assistants, depending on what a jackass the artist is, they might they
Yeah.
might suffer abuse. I've seen it happen. I know some people
Yes.
that have been studio assistants. It is not something I would ever in a million years do because I would, there would be a homicide. But
The artist might face violence. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
would absolutely apprentice with like an art quilter. A quilter that
Oh,
has like a lengthy, I mean, like the Paula Nadelsterns of the world. I would love to spend some time with somebody like her, but generally, artists that make big art and don't actually like they design but don't actually make it themselves. Um, that's the factory industrial complex of art, and it is a different type of big A than the other big A. You know,
yeah.
it's there's a really good book, and I can't remember. I'm positive I've mentioned it to all of you guys, but it's called oh my god. I will tell you before the end of this, but it's
Yeah.
something that I did read recently, and it basically, the woman was a journalist. She didn't really know a lot about art, but she got herself hired as an art assistant just to see what the inside looks like, and she was like, "This is fugly.
Like, yeah,
This is
yeah.
bad."
Well,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
We were talking about some of that stuff in this art class and writing about art class. And I mean, it's kind of shocking. And maybe it's shocking because we come from this world where like, yeah, you don't have apprentices. Like, I mean, you do have long arms, but I mean, that's an interesting, the long arm quilting thing, but I just think it's different. I mean, if you have a bevy of like young, struggling artists, fabricating all of the work that you designed, like that, it's a thing, it's been done a long time. But as we look at some of these artists and we talk about them in this class, and I learned that like the paintings in this particular case, I forget who it was, but I mean, he came up with the method. He came up with the different materials to use, which are very cool. And he's not making the paintings at this point. He's not making them, and it's like his name's on it, and it's weird. It is weird. And remember the whole thing with Luke Haynes, the huge controversy is that when he did his Donald Judd log cabin show, he had a lot of quilters making those quilts and didn't credit them in the, or maybe he did, I forget, but it was a whole thing. It was one of those quilt controversies, that would be a great lecture someday.
Yeah, I knew. Yeah. Oh, Marianne was just saying, discuss Luke Haynes' big log cabin exhibition.
Oh, yeah, there you go. There you go.
I heard there was a scandal. I don't know really a whole lot about it. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Look it up. I can't even remember. I feel like, and I don't know. I haven't talked to Luke in a minute, I can't remember if he did list the quilters like as you came into the exhibit, but then not on the actual quilts themselves. I'm not sure, but this. Oh, I got to write that down. This is another example of like the huge difference between the quilt world and the art world. We are not used to that. When you have a long,
absolutely,
with their name on it in a show, like that's actually really great. No studio model in quilt world. This is very good. And I just wrote down too, Cake, no apprenticeships in the quilt world. Not necessarily never, but that's another thing, a difference in this art making world that's different from the other art making world. Apprenticeship, studio model, like these are different things that inform the world of art that critics write about. And like, it's different here. Oh, it's so interesting. Oh God, this is what I mean about the quilt learning.
And so Kate just said in architecture, it's the same. Young architects work for free to have their a name on their resume. Yep.
Wow.
So the book that and it, this is a really easy read. It's not a difficult read. And for anybody who's interested, it's the book is called Get the Picture, and it's by Bianca Bosker, Bosker. She infiltrated the wine industry. So like the sommelier kind of profession. So she's got just a really interesting, I mean, she may not be like the most like the, I don't know, award-winning investigative journalist, but it's good writing, and I think it's really interesting what she experienced. So it's worth a read.
I have to run to the bathroom super quick. Hang on one second. I don't want to be distracted. Hang on one second.
Okay.
Hold on. I drink a lot of coffee.
So you guys, while Mary is doing that, I just want to say hello to everybody I haven't seen in a while. It is so good to see you guys, and I hope you're doing well. And Padma, stranger, I've missed you. It's so good to see you. I hope you guys have good plans for, hey, Mod Art. I hope you have good plans for the holidays and all the stuffs. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading all of your comments here, because you guys were rapid firing these, and I know I missed a lot. Oh, Marianne's asking, how did Joe Cunningham and Gwen Marston? He may have been an apprentice. I know they were in Hey Sherlock. I know that Joe and Gwen were romantically involved. I don't know if they were married or not. Mary could probably answer that, but I don't know a whole lot about their early years. They owned a retreat center together, so I don't know like what their history is like. So Joe Cunningham and Gwen Marston. I mean, they were a couple, but I mean, was he kind of an apprentice or?
Yeah, well, maybe they learned with Mary Schaefer, but I think they were both, maybe, Cake, or maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, I'm making this up, but yeah, that is you reminded me. I was thinking, I was in the bathroom. I was thinking like I should, before I'm like, there's no apprenticeship model. Like I should talk to Victoria Finley Wolf, ask Joe Cunningham, like, is this a thing, before I'm like assuming that,
Well, and that's a good question. Like Victoria Finley Wolf, I actually know somebody that worked in her studio, and I don't know what he did. And he's he's a quilt artist in his own right. So I don't know if he was doing like production type stuff for her. Yeah, you know, I mean, and there are, this is like that time Mary said, nobody's doing state documentation projects
I
anymore.
know, God. Beth Donaldson at Michigan, she was like, she was so mad. And I was like, oh, crap. Later, I was
Well,
like,
but the thing is, I mean, how are you going to like break the news to everybody without making a faux pas, right?
yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Jill said Cunningham is giving a talk at the New England Quilt Museum on Saturday.
Awesome. That's great. Say hi from me.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I wish I could be there. Joe's an interesting guy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you know, apprenticeship is like, yeah, Sherlock. Apprenticeship is like a whole other, you know, that's a complicated thing too. And
Yeah, I need to read about. I didn't even know what that means. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the thing is, are you talking about like apprenticeship? If you look at other types of hand related work, so like blue collar work, apprenticeship is very important. You know, you cannot learn the those hands-on aspects. Like you could go to school, like information work. This is a perfect thing. You go to school to learn how to code. You can go to school and learn all of the management practices of being a program director, you know, all that kind of stuff. But you cannot learn how to do electrical stuff. You can't do plumbing in theory. Like they do have you learn it in a textbook way, but then your butt's got to go out there with a highly trained person and get dirty. And that really differs greatly from the way many of us are in, you know, in these
American studies programs at UT Austin.
Brain-oriented programs where you don't get your hands dirty.
Right.
You know, it's information worker versus blue-collar worker, you know?
And do they call it, in as far as you know, do they call it apprenticeship? I mean, I've heard apprenticeship in terms of the trades, but do they call it that? I mean, is that's what it's called? Yep. It's still okay, great.
Electrician's apprentice, plumber's apprentice. My dad was a welding apprentice. When I was born, my dad was just finishing up being a welding apprentice, and and it's still part of that's how they do it. And yes, Word Bird Nerds got it. Apprentice, journeyman, master. And the trades still use those terms. Absolutely.
I gotta look. Journeyman.
In fact, one of the major unions made a line in the sand and decided they were going to keep journeyman, even though they're really focusing on getting lots more women.
Sure.
They decided journeyman was much easier than journey person.
Journey person. It's true. I mean, I gotta say, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care about that kind of stuff either.
I don't know, but that's my opinion, and you know, listen, I have to tell you, like. So this is what's so cool. So, you know, from this conversation, from seed to bed, Yakamo, okay, amazing. And also, you know, apprenticeships and studio model and equality, by the way, your reason that like, hello, they're very important, but it's like, you know, and get the picture, that book. But like what I'm learning about being here in this school thing is like, I mean, you just have to, it's like the granular stuff is so important. And it's like, before I mention that there are few apprenticeships, or that apprenticeshipping, journeymaning or journeywomaning, whatever, journey quilting, isn't in the quilt world or not. Like I have to know what that term means. I have to understand, you know, these different things. And if I was writing about something, just like as a writer, I would, because I care about words and I would want to know that I'm making sense. But it's like here, it's even more important. If I'm going to write a paper about like art critique and a quilt show, and I'm talking about the differences between these worlds, like if I say there's no apprenticeships, or there are few apprenticeships, or that it looks different, I have to know what it means in the other worlds, you know. It's just so exciting, because these are things like I need to, you know, investigate.
If you want to talk more offline, I did work for about 7 years in apprenticeship training programs, because
really,
you know, my other life in instructional systems development and design. So
exactly.
Absolutely. And I think, and that's another whole interesting thing to talk about, is trades and craft versus art and craft. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's true. There's the trades, there's like the, plumbing and welding and these kinds of construction-ish things, art, you know, that kind of thing. And then the information careers, which you're talking about. So there's all these different apprenticeships, and like, it's so interesting.
Quilts as a radical egalitarian art form through the BE system.
What? Wow. Okay. Who said that?
Sherlock.
Of course. Sherlock.
Oh my gosh.
It's good. It's good to see everybody. I mean, I really am like actively avoiding. I think I'm in denial of like the names in the chat because I just can't look at it. But okay, but I'm gonna look at it. I'm not even gonna write that down because I'll write it down later when I watch the chat.
I know we are closing in on the time that you have for us today,
Oh,
and I want to show you
really
very quickly
1:59.
my
This is
little
crazy.
project. I know time flies when you're having fun. Dang it!
Obviously, it is 2:00. That is bananas.
Bye, Sherlock. Have a good weekend. Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Madar's got to run too. Aw. I'm so glad you guys were able to come. I really appreciate it. And of course, I know Mary does. So in our last couple of minutes,
yes.
I do want to show you. And the gang kind of knows this, but I haven't talked about it in a while. I sort of launched my own artist in the quilt experiment. And I have a good friend who is an artist. He's a painter, but he's more recently been doing a lot of collage work. And I think collage work is very conducive to pictorial quilting / applique, all the stuff I like. And so he's totally okay with me doing all this, but I want to be careful and respectful and not like blast his work online until he's given me the, This is what the just of like a scan of the artwork looks like. Okay. And I know you can't tell a whole lot about it. It really does make a difference in color, but I'm trying not to work from a color version of it. I'm working from a black and white version of it. And I don't know how big this is. I think it's probably about 8.5 by 10, or 8.5 by 11. So I changed
inches.
That size.
That sounds silly maybe to ask, but inches.
Yeah, not feet.
Okay. Yeah, you never know. I mean, yeah.
And this is my version. And this is a work in progress.
Whoa.
But it is, I'm still not done. Like there's a whole big chunk down here that's missing. But I mean, it's.
Yes.
It's got the same, it's got the same stuff going on. Right now, so the what I can tell you, just in, my general off the top of my head, what's this experience been like so far? And this is the third piece. So the first piece I did, as accurately as I could, I recreated his collage. And then I took the scissors and I cut the thing into 4 parts, totally rearranged it, and then added more to it. So it looks completely different. But what in that will be happening with this one. It will undergo some changes. But I think what's really interesting to me is that was what I wanted to. That was my goal. I want to make it, and then I want to change it. And what was really surprising to me in the beginning was I was like, oh, his collages are very blocky and there's text and stuff. Easy peasy. I do this all the time. And then I realized it's kind of hard because he uses other mediums in there. He's using markers and paint and stuff. And I mean, just like if you've ever done a collage, like very free, right? So what has been really interesting as technique for me right now is figuring out how to turn these marks and papers and bits and pieces, how to translate that into fiber. And so, I won't get into like the weeds here, but like I've had to use tulle up here, you can see, to approximate kind of what this like liquidy dry brush sort of mark making here.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's like a fun part of the process. But like, I'm not going to call this done when it looks like his work because that's not what we're doing here.
There you go. And so cutting it, slicing it, and like remixing it basically is.
And I do that with my own work. Yeah, I do that with my own work. I'm actually working on another piece where I took one of my quilts, I cut it the hell up. And I like to do that. So that for me is what this project's going to be about. And, I want to return to the book, The Artist and the Quilter, and really look at, what some of those partnerships, I mean, they weren't really partnerships necessarily in a lot of cases, but sort of look at what, like, how did that turn out? What did that look like? I mean, sometimes they were approximations of the work, or they were identical objects of the work, and so that's what my little experiment has been about. I
love it. I mean, I wonder if I could see a gallery show of the two of you.
That's what I'm hoping. Yeah.
That would be amazing.
That's what I'm hoping. I would love to have these pieces like side by side, and then just and I don't want to call it oral history because that's not what, but I want to like talk to him and have kind of the conversation of like, how does it feel to have, you know, this experience. I mean, you just made some artwork, you know, how does this, like, you know, and part 2 of this is I want to turn it the other way and say, like, here's a piece of work I made.
Yeah.
Here it is. Do what you will with it.
What if he, I mean, he could try textiles, but also what if he painted on one of yours?
That's more of what I'm thinking, you know? Yeah.
Like that whole mix, like that's very interesting. I think that is a very cool thing. Yeah, hell yeah. And then it's gendered too. It doesn't always have to be that way, but it is in your case. So like, what does that mean? Hell yeah.
There's a lot there, I think, that we can work with. And yeah, it's and I already mentioned to you, like, before we started, like, you know, think about the quilts that are being used by artists like Robert Rauschenberg's bed. I know is one we spent a lot of time talking about at Quilt Nerd, and, you know, Cake's hot takes about Robert Rauschenberg and those artists of the 60s. And then even, you know, modern folks like Sanford Biggers, I have great respect for his work. But again, these men are using the work of women in their work.
It's true.
You know,
a lot of labor they didn't pay for or
exactly
credit.
And they don't have the permission of those women. Presuming that you know,
there's this one of the professors in the African American diaspora studies department, she's so cool, Cherise Smith, and we were talking about Sanford Biggers, and she was like, I walked out. She's a Black woman, and she was just like, I was so mad I walked out, you know. And she's like, he was using this stuff, and I was like, I think we could get along pretty well, you know. And it's complicated. It's always complicated. It is
so complicated. And that's the thing. I love his work, but I'm also like, dude, that quilt.
It's just like, cut it up and use it. But like, you gotta say that, like, this, you know, I don't know that he does all the time. And you know, it's been years since he did that kind of work, and he's so talented. I admire him too. But
but flip that script. What if the woman hands over her quilt?
Exactly. I mean, it's totally rich with like interpretive like possibilities, and hell yeah. So by the way, the thing that I'm doing, I would say, like, you just must know, like, obviously, like, this has been amazing, and it feels like it's been 5 minutes. The reason that I have to go is that at 2:30, I am going to have an interview because I applied to a travel grant to go to Louisiana State University. I went this summer because Bertha Meckstroth papers are there. I think I mentioned this, maybe I mentioned already at the top of the stream, but so it's the Joe Geese Endowment, whatever, and Joe is alive and well, and she wants to talk to the people who applied. And so the question is, do I leave? I think I can leave this like this shirt, right?
I think you look kind of, classy, and you...
Let me just, hang on.
All right, well, let's decide. Turn it around. Let's see.
Okay. It's probably better. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. This looks kind of schlubby. This looks
it's a
sort
really
of like
cute top. You look very workaday now.
Yeah, exactly. It's Elaine, or it's Eileen Fisher. Elaine. Oh God. And then what about this? Should I put these on? Or I don't know. I feel like I'm a little too serious. I'm grading papers now. Oh God, I hate it so much. Oh God, for the TA thing, I hate it. I can't talk about it. It's terrible.
You know, you can farm the papers out to us. You know that we'll.
Oh God, don't you say it? Because I'll do it, and it's all online. Well, it's very hard to log in as me through the like security thing. Anyway, I love you, and I love everyone in this room, the virtual room, and I miss you. And Quilt Nerd is like, it's just a very, very important community. And I know that I ended the show and I kind of like disappeared, but that's kind of, honestly, it is how I have done things sometimes, because I am very bad with nostalgia and feeling sad and missing people. And so sometimes I just can't handle it. And that's not fair to the other people who might want to, like, you know, say hi to me or whatever, but I don't know. And it's something I would change if I could, and I can't. So that's all I can say about it. And I love you very much. And I'm just really, I'm not good at goodbyes. I'm very bad at them. It's very bad.
So we're gonna let you do the Irish goodbye. Just turn the camera off.
Okay. I love you all very, very
you are welcome here anytime, particularly because it really boosts my numbers, but because I too love you and we miss you all the time so much. And so we're gonna have to, first of all, good luck with that grant. Fingers are crossed for you. We obviously want to continue the Bertha. We want inquiring minds want to know. So
Oh yeah.
we want
Wait,
you.
I
We
gotta
want
show
you
you
down
one
there.
thing. Hold on, I gotta show you one thing. I gotta do it. I gotta do it. Can I show? There's a picture of Bertha McStrath that has never been seen before that was down in Louisiana, and I have to show it to you. I have to do it.
Okay.
Am I able to show my screen?
Yeah.
So, so first of all, it may be, and there's a lot of research left to do on it, and I know better than to be saying stuff. But it is possible that Bertha had a relationship with a woman. I mean, it is like,
What?
I'm telling you, this correspondence that I've been reading. I was there very, very briefly down at LSU this summer, in Baton Rouge in mid-August. Not fun, not great. But anyway,
That's awful.
yeah. But okay, so look at this. Oh my God. This is a picture of Bertha McStrath in nursing school as a young woman. Are you prepared? I'm not sure that you are, but I'm going to show you. And okay, and this is this woman here. Okay, hang on. Nobody has seen this. Well, they saw it at AQSG for like 2 seconds. So this is a very big deal. Okay. All right. This is Bertha McStrath around 1901. Hang on one second. Turn of the century, like 1875 to 1900, somewhere in there. Sorry, around the turn of the century, because she went to Radcliffe in like 1902, whatever, something like that. Look at how lovely she is.
She looks nothing like Mrs. Tiggy Winkle.
Thank you. And the more I know about her, the more I'm like, excuse me, like this whole Tiggy Winkle thing. And I can confirm she had polio as a child, and she called it, they called it infantile paralysis. That was what she had. It's confirmed. She wrote this letter to the Christian Science Monitor, Cake. We've always wondered, like, what was the religious thing with her? Dude, she was a Christian Scientist.
Interesting. Okay.
This one,
all right.
not Margaret, but this is Margarita Sargent, who has been mentioned before, her friend from Radcliffe. The correspondence between that Bertha saved like every letter that this woman wrote to her. They were friends from Radcliffe, and I realized that 19th century women's communication, correspondence, relationships, it was a different vibe in terms of like intimate language, like, oh, my darling, yeah, I would clasp you to me. And, so that's like, we know that that's different. And there are just some, and I have read a fraction of the stuff that's in that file because I only had a very short time, but it is very much worth a close look to see what was going on.
I can't wait. So, my goodness.
Bertha McStrath was like this, like, artist who was like facing like all of these challenges and still made this amazing art. Like, the story is even better,
Oh my gosh, yes. Bertha is such a fascinating topic, and I can't wait to see what you find out. Yeah, so we want you to get that grant, so you go get that grant.
I'm gonna go get it. I love y'all very much.
Well, mwah!
Thank you for
We
having me.
will see you soon, and you have a wonderful Thanksgiving if I don't talk to you before then.
Happy Thanksgiving. Okay, bye.
Bye. Okay, guys. Well, now you're stuck with me. That was so much fun. You guys were rapid fire with all the questions, and I appreciate you being here. Of course, I'm not done for today. So in the event you want to stick around, I do have the rest of the Mary Had a Little Lamb chapter to read. So I hope that you guys will stick around for that. Thank you for coming, Yakamo. And honestly, thank you to Mary. I know she has been so hard to track down because she's been so busy. And she's always running in a million miles an hour with lots and lots and lots of things. Contact info for Mary, I'm pretty sure it's the same. Mary at maryfons.com, I think. Hit me up later, Linda, and I'll make sure that she's still using the same email address that she used to use. So that said, I hope that was fun. It was so good to see Mary. And I hope you'll stick around for this. The Lady of Godey's, for those of you that I haven't seen in a while, is what we have been reading here. And it is a really interesting... Always good to see you, Quiltish. We'll see you soon. Let's see. Let me do that. Okay. So getting myself back to just normal cake. So yeah, you guys that need to leave now, I understand. I get it. You were here just for Mary. No, it's okay. I understand. People were probably on their lunch break. I get it. But if you have time and you want to stick around, so The Lady of Godey's, of course, is about Sarah Josepha Hale. And Lady of Godey's is, known to be like the first like women's fashion magazine, the Vogue of the 19th century. But it has been surprisingly interesting. I think that, lots of folks here will agree that they have learned some things. And I, too, have really learned some stuff. And so the chapter, Mary's Lamb and Mr. Ford, just to give a little bit of a throwback on what, because it's taken me a while to read this chapter because it's pretty long. Basically, Mary Had a Little Lamb was written by Sarah Josepha Hale. She was the, editor of Godey's Ladies Magazine for 50 years. And in the 1830s, she wrote this little book of poems for children, and it included Mary Had a Little Lamb. But alas, this other woman comes out. Her name is Mary Sawyer Tyler. And she said, why, I am the Mary in the poem. And this poem was written about me, and I know the guy that wrote the first 12 lines, and it wasn't Sarah Josepha Hale. And better yet, Henry Ford got in on the action and restored the little schoolhouse that Mary Sawyer went to, and I don't know, dragged it to Michigan or something. And he's for all the reasons that we don't like Henry Ford, well, now you have another one. So that's kind of where we're at in here. We're talking about John Ralston Jr., who it is claimed wrote Mary Had a Little Lamb, or at least the beginning of it. And then we have Sarah Josepha Hale, and this is all coming out when oh my gosh, Kate, I can't wait to hear. So you picked up a bound book of Godey's. So the magazine was a bound book, I'm pretty sure. Every copy of it I've ever seen was like a book about this thick. I don't think that it was a magazine as we know magazines today. It was literally a book, I'm pretty sure. Now tell me if I'm wrong, you guys, but I cannot wait to see what you think about it and like what's in there. So anyway, what we've been reading here is how, all this stuff about Mary Had a Little Lamb came out like when Sarah Hale was like 90 years old. She dies soon when this stuff comes out, and her kids kind of took up for her. And one of the last letters that she dictated was very soon before she passed away, and she basically was like, I don't know what the hell y'all are talking about. I wrote the poem, okay? So that's sort of where we're at. And so let's see. I'm gonna go back one little bit, so I'm not stopping in the middle of something. So Shirley, remind you, I usually do this. We're reading The Lady of Godey's by Sarah Josepha Hale, written by Ruth Finley. And our chapter is, I think it's chapter 16 or 17. It is chapter 17, Mary's Lamb and Mr. Ford. It's like part 3 of this chapter. And so we continue. Surely there is no reason to question either the possibility or probability of Mrs. Tyler's story, up to and including the arrival of her pet lamb at school. Putting the age of Mary Sawyer at the time of the lamb incident at 10 or 12 years, and that of John Ralston at 11 or 12, the booklet goes on to assert, now this is Henry Ford's booklet. Henry Ford published this booklet in the 20s, slandering Sarah Hale, basically taking the glory from her. The booklet goes on to assert that there is no manner of doubt that there was a John Ralston and that he lived in Stirling. But here again, no occasion for doubt arises. There was certainly a John Ralston Jr., son of that Captain John Ralston, whose portrait still hangs on the walls of Faneuil Hall. And undoubtedly, he spent some time with his uncle in Stirling. He died. Oh, Sherlock told me I had to issue spoiler alerts because Ruth Finley didn't. So spoiler alert, everybody dies. He died a freshman at Harvard on February 20th, 1822, age 17. That he had an unusually attractive personality is attested by the fact that soon after his death, a 16-page tract was printed in Boston by one John Cotton Jr. entitled Tribute of Affection to John Ralston Jr. So he's a popular dude. Oh, bye, Padma. It was so good to see you. It's been a really long time since we've seen Padma. She was working on, I think, mastering Spanish. So she took a break from quilting. Tiny printing, says Kate. Yeah, I bet. Okay. And was he capable, between the ages of 10 and 14, he was born in 1805, and his uncle's ministry in Stirling lasted only from 1815 to 1819, of writing verse? Very likely. Many children at that age do write rhymes, and John seems to have been a fairly precocious boy in an era when all children matured early. Girls frequently married at 15. David Hale entered West Point at 14. I did not know that. Did he, while living in Stirling, visit the school, witness the lamb incident later related by Mrs. Tyler, and write some verses to her? He could have, and perhaps he did. At least he seems to have done something to impress his personality on Mary Sawyer's mind, that the mere fact of his presence in a rural community would have been enough. He is the son of somebody whose portrait hangs in Faneuil Hall, after all. For John Ralston, in addition to possessing an attractive personality, enjoyed two outstanding distinctions: the social prestige, and it was prestige in those days, of being the minister's nephew, and the intellectual superiority of preparing to enter Harvard. Also, he was no country boy, but had come from the great city of Boston, where his family were people of some consequence. And if John wrote some verses, he certainly carried them to Mary Sawyer. He would have been less than human if he had not sought that much satisfaction as a reward for his poetical effort. What seems strange now is that if he possessed a knack for versifying, it was not specially mentioned along with his other accomplishments and virtues in the tribute published after his death and written by his uncle and tutor, the Reverend Mr. Capon. But granting that John Ralston wrote some verses about a lamb and took them to Mary Sawyer on some date between 1815 and 1819, it surely does not follow that they were the same 12 lines that constitute the opening stanza and a half of Mary's Lamb, as published in 1830 by Sarah Hale. Of that sequence, no evidence exists beyond the word of Mrs. Tyler, passed to the public 50 years later. Mrs. Tyler, just looking for a little fame. One cannot be sure, of course, of the date when Mrs. Hale's poem first came to Mrs. Tyler's attention. It could not have been before 1830, the year the poem was originally printed, and may have been much, much later. Could she, in the necessarily long interval between her own Lamb at School incident and her first hearing or reading of Mrs. Hale's poem, have forgotten the exact wording on the piece of paper handed her by John Ralston? The answer must be yes, she could have. Was her first reading of the Hale poem from a printing thereof appearing under Mrs. Hale's signature? Not necessarily. The poem, as it has been shown, soon received wide currency in reprints that gave no credit to its author. And if you remember, the McGuffey's readers snatched a whole bunch of stuff from lots of different publications for children, not the least of which was Sarah Hale's Poems for Children. Could she have confused the verses written by John Ralston around 1817 when she was only 11 with the poem published years later, and perhaps first seen by her in an anonymous printing of still later date? It is well known that memory can and frequently does produce just such confusion. Well, that's fascinating. I mean, remember, this is 1931 when Ruth Finley wrote this. And I mean, just today we're looking at court testimony and saying that witnesses' statements are really not very good data because witnesses' memories are often wrong. And however, since Mrs. Tyler may have been in 1878 when she publicly dramatized herself as the heroine of a famous poem, one is not impressed that hers was a mind practiced in exactness of thinking. Yeah, I think that Ruth Finley just threw some shade at Mrs. Tyler. The Ford booklet quotes a letter she wrote September 8th, 1879, in which she says the poem handed her by John Ralston, being the first 3 stanzas of the poem as now printed, was written in blank verse. Facing the fact that Mrs. Hale's poem is not written in blank verse, the booklet says that probably Mrs. Tyler meant the 12 lines were not broken into stanzas. Oh, that's convenient. This explanation may be correct, but if so, it serves only to illustrate Mrs. Tyler's inexact mode of thought. Again, in this same letter, she says, "I am ignorant how the poem got into print." Nor is there anything to show that she made inquiry as to this, despite the amazement that must have been hers when she discovered that the very verses she believed were written about her as a child and actually given her on a piece of paper by their author were now being circulated in printed form. And now, sifted down, what is the evidence that John Ralston wrote the first 12 lines of Mary's Lamb, or indeed any lines about a lamb? That Mrs. Tyler said so is the sole evidence offered. She told a great many people the story, and they repeated it. But every particle of the attempted proof goes back to her bare word in the matter and nothing else. I think we've pretty much concluded that Mrs. Tyler didn't know what she was talking about, and her memory was not good. The critical analysis of Mary's Lamb offered by the Ford booklet contends that a poem itself discloses a double nature of composition, that the first 12 lines narrate an incident which the last 12, conceded by the booklet to have been written by Mrs. Hale, point a moral. But that is true. It is a narration versus a moral. I have read it already. It's coming up on the next page. We'll read it again. The critical analysis holds that the style of the first 12 lines evinces artless naturalness, which in the 13th line gives way to artificial and moralistic imaginativeness. I think Henry Ford, in trying to critically analyze Mary Had a Little Lamb, which is a poem for children, I don't know what he was smoking back then, but this must have been, the pinnacle of his wrongheadedness. All this ignores the form of the poem as originally published by Mrs. Hale. Had not the uncredited reprint contained in Songs for the Little Ones at Home divided the poem's 3 8-line stanzas into 6 4-line stanzas, perhaps even McGuffey's would never have thought of doing so correct technically was the original structure. But when the printer who made up this old collection of children's verses reached the bottom of page 119, there was more room for the first 4 lines of Mary's Lamb, and no more. So to meet the exigencies of makeup, the first stanza was split. It was logical then, for the sake of uniformity, to split the 2 remaining stanzas. Consequently, the poem, as printed in Songs for the Little Ones at Home, appears in quatrains. By a curious coincidence, the printer who made up McGuffey's second reader for 1857 faced precisely the same problem as had the printer of the earlier Songs for Little Ones at Home. He, too, reached a page, which happened to be 99, where there remained room for only the first 4 lines of the poem, and he solved his problem in the exact fashion of his predecessor, by printing Mary's Lamb in quatrains. As for the combination of incident and moral in a poem written in the first half of the 19th century, that surely should occasion no bewilderment. More surprising, indeed, would be the lack of that combination, for such was the literary fashion of the day. Practically every climax was a moral. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. Sarah Hale loved the moral of a story. Furthermore, if critical analysis of a nursery rhyme must be indulged in, the first 12 lines of Mary's Lamb leave an abrupt, unfinished piece of work offering no excuse for their having been written. Viewed in this light, they represent only the first step and part of the second step of accepted structure. I love that. Yeah. So if John Ralston just wrote these 12 lines, well, I mean, that is just garbage. Without the rest of it, it makes no damn sense. In Mrs. Hale's poem, the time-honored structure is flawless. The first stanza presents a problem, the abnormality of a lamb in a schoolroom. Here we go. Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. He followed her to school one day. That was against the rule. It made the children laugh and play to see a lamb at school. The second stanza develops the action. I cannot believe. I have just been reading the poem to you. I have not read you the critical analysis in between. I'm sorry. I cannot stop laughing that this is just ridiculous to me that somebody has analyzed this poem. The second stanza develops the action, the lamb being turned out by the teacher and waiting for the appearance of his one sure friend Mary, to whom he immediately runs for protection. And so the teacher turned him out, and still he lingered near, and waited patiently about till Mary did appear. And then he ran to her and laid his head upon her arm, as if he said, I'm not afraid, you'll keep me from all harm. The third stanza is the conclusion, the logical result or outgrowth of the problem and its development, a moral, the precise moral Mrs. Hale had in mind from her very first line. What makes the lamb love Mary so? The eager children cry. Oh, Mary loves the lamb, you know, the teacher did reply. And you each gentle animal in confidence may bind, and make them follow at your call, if you are always kind. Structurally, the poem was written by Mrs. Hale. Structurally, the poem was written as written by Mrs. Hale, defies criticism. But why did not Mrs. Hale come out in the newspapers in 1878 and deny the Tyler Ralston claim? Well, off the top of my head, she was in her 90s and probably didn't have the energy to do such a thing. And she probably was also like, this lady is crazy. What's she talking about? Let's see. Okay. First, she was very old and had just completed 50 years of exceedingly active and strenuous work. Secondly, she knew the verses really were her own. Why should she be concerned? Also by that time, she was accustomed to have the peculiar temptation the poem seems always to have offered. College and army songs and parodies innumerable have been based on it. Godey's had published some of them, but finally seemed to have grown thoroughly sick of all Marys and the whole race of lambs. In August 1872, Mr. Godey, seated in his armchair, announced, the following are selected from about 100 verses received and all we intend to publish about Mary and her little lamb. So here's a little play on Mary. Mary had a little lamb. 'Twas subject to the gout. At last she got disgusted and put it up the spout. In the third place, having been required all her editorial life to protect her magazine from that peculiar phase of neurosis rampant in the 19th century, which impelled certain types of mentality to seek notoriety by fair means or foul, Mrs. Hale, long before 1878, had adopted a policy best explained in her own words as published in the July 1863 issue of the Lady's Book. Borrowed feathers. Certain pretenders at literary talent seem to be afflicted with a disease that, for want of a definite name, we will call the mania of appropriation. When a real poet has won particular applause, these pretenders to genius endeavor either to imitate or plagiarize a portion of the successful poem. And in some instances, they even appropriate or claim the whole. The young lady who announced herself as the writer of Nothing to Wear is a distinguished instance of this kind of mania. The real author is never injured in these cases. On the contrary, a poem worth stealing or imitating is immediately vested with superior merits. And I think, did Marianne say earlier that the imitation is the greatest form of flattery? Oh, so Marianne says Mary Tyler's late recollection and lack of evidence don't pass the evidentiary test, according to Wikipedia. Wow. We knew that. In our long course of editorial duty, we have had many scores of imitations and plagiarisms sent to us. One of these appeared in our April number, after which followed the usual editorial apology to the real author. A surprisingly large number of such corrections are to be found in all publications of the Times. The embarrassment was not Godey's only. Just what caused this inclination to seek vicarious fame? Yeah, what inclination would seek people to would people seek vicarious fame? Because they want to be the center of attention? Why not? A tendency which seems to have been peculiarly feminine, well, excuse me, is hard now to understand. Perhaps the explanation may be that for the first time in history, it was possible for a woman who, in the former order of things, ordinarily had lived and died obscurely, to win more or less of renown. 19th century women seem to have craved the limelight, and, if records of news events are to be trusted, went to strange lengths to gain notice. Education has since done much to free society of this form of egomania. No, it hasn't. Oh my goodness. I think reality TV brought it back in a really, really big way. But absurdly enough, the following appeared in the New York Times for May 29th, 1931, practically as these words were written. So this piece that she's gonna, looks like she's got all of it here. This piece was literally at the same time she's writing this book. So it says, Mary, owner of famous lamb, marks 90th birthday in Wales, by the Canadian Press. London, May 28th. Mrs. Mary Hughes, who is stated to be the Mary of the nursery rhyme, Mary Had a Little Lamb, today celebrated her 90th birthday at her home, Tyesa Farm, Llangollen, North Wales. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. And received congratulations from children in all parts of the world. Mary, who is blind and suffers from chronic rheumatism, delights to relate how years ago her little lamb was turned out of school. The lamb had followed her from her father's farm 2 miles away. The rhyme was written by Miss Sarah Buell, who was staying at the farm at the time. Sarah Buell's name sounds really familiar. Buell. I feel like I've that name has come up before. So obviously a person. Oh. Duh. Because Sarah Buell is Sarah Josepha Hale's maiden name. Cake. That's interesting because so much of that is so completely wrong. This happening in 1931. This woman is 90 years old. She would have been born more than 10 years, or about 10 years after the poem was actually written. And Miss Sarah Buell could not have been staying at a farm at that time, because at that point she had already been married and her husband had died. Okay. Here then is another claim that has been going the rounds of the newspapers for years. The Boston Post for May 19th, 1929 quoted Mrs. Hughes as saying the following. It is true that America claims that the incident happened at Redstone Hill, Sterling, USA, and that the poem was written by the wife of Horatio Hale, the American ethnologist. No. Horatio Hale is Sarah's son. The details of the story are given in the Encyclopedia Britannica. Did you once think that the Encyclopedia Britannica was like 100% correct? Apparently it is not. The details of the story are given in the Encyclopedia Britannica, where it is stated that Hale married Mrs. Sarah Josepha Buell. And I have only to add that this lady, I have reason to believe, was the Miss Buell who stayed with my father and mother at the farm in the spring of 1849, when the lamb named Billy followed me to school. I possess a letter written to my mother by Miss Buell after her return to London. After her death, there was some controversy as to the authorship of the poem, and her son wrote a letter, which appeared in the Boston Transcript of April 1889, that his mother had definitely asserted shortly before her death that she was the author of the poem. This was about as garbled an account of fact and fancy as could well be conceived. Without attempt to unscramble Mrs. Hughes' understanding of relationships in the Hale family, it need only be said that Mrs. Hale was not in England in 1849 and that Mary's Lamb had been in print 11 years before Mrs. Hughes was born. Nor is Mrs. Hughes the only Briton to seek approbation through Sarah Hale. Mrs. Hale's verse was always being purloined. It Snows, for instance, originally published in Godey's in January 1837, was later reprinted in England under another signature. Another claimant to the honor of being the original Mary was a Mary Dale. Her claims are to be found in New York and Boston newspapers of 1903. And now, did or did not Sarah Hale write Mary's Lamb? Was she or was she not capable of plagiarizing the first 12 lines? Is she or is she not the sole author of this best-known child's poem of the English language? The Ford booklet's final argument as to fact says the following. No letters have been produced as from her, Mrs. Hale's, hand. The volume of 1830 and the statements of her descendants as to their recollections of her poem constitute the available material now at hand. I think that Horatio Hale and his children and so on and so forth are probably a little bit more believable, say, than these other women. Ordinarily, the signature of a professional writer of recognized integrity is sufficient testimony of authorship and must stand unless conclusive evidence is adduced to the contrary. And are not the statements of Mrs. Hale's own children living at the time their mother composed the famous verses equal in credibility to those of a woman who claimed that a boy, dead 8 years when the poem was first published, had written something on a slip of paper which itself was never produced? And would Sarah Hale have stooped to make even imitative use of another's work, let alone plagiarize it? In the January number of the Ladies' Magazine for 1828, 2 years before her poem Mary's Lamb was even thought of, she made clear her reaction to this 19th century weakness. In a review of an annual called The Token, she said in part, "The poetry in especial we are sorry to pass over, for we see much to praise, except the frequent imitation of Mrs. Hemans." I don't know who that is, but it is spelled Hemans. And Mrs. He-Man is pretty funny. We entirely disapprove of all imitations. They are the bane of all real excellence. But it is no longer accurate to say that the volume of 1830 and the statements of her, meaning Mrs. Hale's, descendants as to their recollections of her poem constitute the available material now at hand. In the first place, it is now established that there was separate signed publication of the poem in the Juvenile Miscellany the same year the book was issued. In the second place, there is the letter Mrs. Hale herself dictated to the Wide Awake magazine. And finally, examination of the files of Godey's Lady's Book discloses a statement direct from Mrs. Hale's own hand. In the book for January 1875, she reprinted Mary's Lamb in her editorial column, together with an explanation of her purpose in writing the poem. Her comment follows. About 40 years ago, when my home was in Boston, an effort was made to introduce vocal music as one of the lessons to be taught in all the primary schools of that city. The leader of this novel measure was Professor John Mason. And it says here that John is either a typographical error or a slip of Mrs. Hale's pen, Professor Mason's given name being Lowell, as Mrs. Hale knew. So, eminent as an instructor in the art of psalmody. That is a word I have never, ever heard in my life. But I'm guessing it means like hymns or something, because this is spelled Psalmody. The art of psalmody. And highly esteemed for his abilities and success is in the profession which he seemed to have loved as and highly esteemed for his abilities and success in the profession which he seemed to love as a means of doing good. He held the faith that all children who could talk could be taught to sing, and that it was the duty of those who had care of the young to have all taught the art of psalmody. He said that the simplicity of harmonious sounds, united with words and thoughts, which morally educated the young mind in the knowledge of truth and goodness, could never be wholly forgotten, and that rhyme and reason were important aids to memory. Okay, the singing of psalms. Okay. Why keep a handwritten copy when you have a million times in print? Exactly. Psalmody, the singing of psalms. Professor Mason thus gave his views when requesting that I would help his plan by writing little songs for little children, which he would set to music. You know, and as a side note, I think it's really interesting to me here that saying, you know, rhyme and reason are important aids to memory. It's fascinating to me here, like early 1800s. I mean, this is a time when like we've still got like miasma theory around about, you know, wellness and illnesses, but that they're already recognizing, you know, from a psychological standpoint that repetition and little rhymes can like get stuck in your head, you know, and they recognize that. I'm sorry. Professor Mason thus gave his views when requesting that I would help his plan by writing little songs for little children, which he would set to music. I knew he was master of the art he taught and that his motives were worthy of success. The songs were written, his plan was faithfully carried out, and with wonderful effect. Commenting next on the proficiency in choral music later attained in Boston and on a triumph of choral voices at the Boston Coliseum, Mrs. Hale proceeded. We did not have the privilege of enjoying this pleasure, but the report brought to mind the small beginnings 40 years ago. We thought of the good professor who struck the first chord of this wonderful creation of choral voices, which had made the men and women of Boston thus happy and glorious, as it were, in the possession of a new faculty both of giving and enjoying pleasure. We're talking about singing, guys. There's a lot there that sounds a little sketchy. Exactly, Marianne. Yes, you can remember song lyrics from your youth, but you can't remember where you put your keys. Same. Like I can remember both of my grandparents' phone numbers. I can remember, you know, like little tiny details from my childhood, but can I remember the name of a book I read last week? No, I can't. I have to look for it. So yes, those little things that get ingrained in you. And I mean, think about commercial jingles. Like that's where this mindset took us, you know, into the 21st century. For those of you that are not in the U.S., I don't know if you're, you know, familiar with this, but there's the J.G. Wentworth commercials. And if I just triggered something by putting the J.G. Wentworth song in your head, I'm not going to sing it here because I don't want anybody coming after me, but you know what I'm talking about if you've heard J.G. Wentworth. And I know it's a nationwide commercial. I was shocked to see it when I was in California, I think, back in the spring, and I saw the commercial and I was like, oh my God, this is nationwide. So you're welcome. So our mention of the little songbook was not to claim any part of the success, but to do honor to a good and faithful man whose work was born with precious fruit. Whose work has borne such precious fruit. And then we wanted to interest those who are in earnest to promote improvement in the free schools, to introduce vocal music as the best method of securing attendance of pupils without compulsion. Of the little songs we put before the little folks have any part in hastening this era of vocal music in the free schools, we shall be richly compensated for our part in the good work. Whereupon she printed the words of two of her best known songs, Winter Joys and Mary's Lamb. Still sits the schoolhouse by the road, the little old schoolhouse across whose threshold, it is said, children's feet tramped in and out from 1798 to 1856. When as a school the building was discarded. Now, children's feet again skip over the uneven sill and echo on the warped floor. Since Redstone Schoolhouse was moved to Sudbury, remember, Henry Ford was responsible for that. So since the schoolhouse was moved to Sudbury, it again keeps school, its pupils the children of employees on the Ford property and of neighboring farmers. And all of this is as it should be. It is fitting that today should be so physically linked with yesterday. But the schoolhouse is what it is, nothing less and nothing more, quaint, charming, inspiring in the heart and mind of every visitor, new patriotism and pride in what it stands for, that bygone century which saw the working out, slow and faltering at first, of our American experiment. It blows my mind. She's mentioned the American experiment several times, and like that was a phrase, you know, the American experiment. And maybe I just have not paid attention all my life, but I feel like this whole American experiment verbiage kind of has come up a lot in maybe the past decade or so, you know, and certain presidents and et cetera and whatnot. I just never heard that phrase very much or really at all until the last few years. But I guess it's been in our lexicon for a very long time. So slow and faltering at first of our American experiment. It is an emblem of a great achievement, and it is good that it should be preserved. But it is not good that it should perpetuate an extraneous error. Extraneous error. The tablet placed at the door reads, Mary Elizabeth Sawyer, the Mary of the poem, John Ralston, author of the first 12 lines. Here is a statement made as fact where there was never more than an unsubstantiated claim. Here is a lasting record that sets forth with color of finality a judgment flagrantly at variance with the evidence. Oh my gosh, like, we don't have problems like that today. Yakamo. So American democracy has it's often been called like this, our little 200-year-old experiment. I think it was often said like this wouldn't work. The U.S., well, it wasn't the U.S. then, but America got its freedom from England, and we created this, democracy of United States. And even though I think that today the European Union, like, I mean, it's not exactly the same thing, but it's this union, a group of entities, was really kind of an experimental thing. And, Americans are very, I don't know, twitchy about it, I guess. But yes, American democracy as we do it has I guess often been called the Great American Experiment. So take with that what you will, right? Yeah, young nation, no monarch, democracy. Yeah. There wasn't too much of that going on elsewhere. Yeah, it was definitely something that, I mean, gosh, in the 1700s, like many countries had rulers, and the idea of having a president instead of a king was, it was an experiment at the time. Many nations have followed in our democracy experiment, and sometimes it feels like Rome is burning. So I promise not to get into any more politics, though. Okay. Finality, a judgment flagrantly at variance with the evidence. Yeah, like we still do this today. Here is accepted the uncorroborated word of a woman whose only bid to fame was her own assertion as against the accomplishments of one whom America still owes more in the way of those fundamentals which background modern life than to any other single woman. Oh no, Wordbird Nerd. Holy moly. I hope everything's okay. Oh my god. Yeah, go let us know. I hope that person's okay. Oh my god. Send good vibes to this person in Florida. Oh my goodness. Okay. Where did I leave off here? And it is peculiarly ironical that the little old schoolhouse at Wayside Inn, the most characteristically American memorial yet raised to education, hopefully we've done more since then, should cast, however unwittingly, aspersion on the name of one who stood above all else for education. Oh, yeah. Is that not like a poop in Sarah Hale's direction, as much as she fought for children to have access to these schools? Who, seeing into the heart of childhood, hastened our great today, that with lavish hand offers schooling to every American boy, rich or poor, and to every American girl. Nothing can take away the legacy Sarah Hale left her country. Each year, the states will join in keeping Thanksgiving Day. Vassar and her sister colleges will go on, and more will join them. Women physicians will continue to learn the art of healing and carry it to those who need. Abuse of children is taboo. For half of our citizenry, sex no longer bars the door of economic opportunity. These consummations Sarah Hale fought for, and they will remain. Bunker Hill Monument now indissolubly stands on Union, the Union she so loved. And the shrine at Mount Vernon, which she helped to save, continues as the symbol of freedom. Things tangible and intangible she gave, institutions, aspirations, and dreams. What can this 20th century, for which she planned and builded so well, do for Sarah Hale? A little nursery rhyme, unimportant of itself, but which has found its way into the memory of every man and woman who speaks the English tongue, may be restored to her, its author. Well, I absolutely certainly hope that more ears have now heard these things about Sarah Hale, and absolutely, I stand behind Sarah Hale. She is absolutely, absolutely most wonderful. We may have more work to do, but call me a halito, a halite. I guess we'll call ourselves halites. Halites, yeah. Halians? We're Halians. Yeah, so there's one more, I think there's one more chapter left. So I will get to that next week. It's called Truly Your Friend, chapter 18. So, and it's a short one. So we'll close down this book on Monday. Yeah, this has been Halitis. Halitis. I've got Halitis. Yeah, I mean, you know, our friend Dee Marie, who's often lurking, she frequently has told me how good she thinks this book is and how much she's enjoyed. I hope the rest of you feel the same. I frankly have been blown away by the things I've learned about Sarah Hale. And I mean, it just, as a great American woman, and the things that she did here, and, you know, that I think have hopefully spread to other places, you know, she's amazing. She really, really deserves more recognition, in my opinion. So we will leave it there. It has been so wonderful. Halians! Halians! Yeah, I think I like Halians. I'm a Halian. Oh, goodness. Yeah, Robin, right? It has been eye-opening, and you know, I mean, I just go back to the fact that Sarah Hale, would cell phones blow her mind? Yeah. Would AI like absolutely break her? Yeah, I'm sure. But just thinking about some of the things that we still deal with in our societies, you know, I mean, the election, democracy, everything in the US, women in general, you know, as what we fight for education and equality, you know, it doesn't matter where you're from in that aspect. Women are always, you know, fighting and struggling. Yeah, Sarah Hale is absolutely, like, she's a game changer to me. So I'm glad we've read this book. I'm honored that I've been able to read it to you. So, well, I am going to split. I'm going to be going to Virginia this weekend for a couple days. So wish me luck. Yes, Druid, we do need a Hale emote. I will find something to represent Sarah Hale, because I think she's going to have to become like our mascot, right? over at Quilt Nerd, we had Bets, you know, from Harriet Powers Quilt. She was an independent hog who ran from Georgia to Virginia. You know, that stick-to-itiveness, you know, I love that, and I think that's a lamb, a turkey, yes. A turkey riding a lamb riding a turkey. I don't know. We'll find something. So, yeah, so I will see you guys on Monday. Same bat time, same bat channel, or same cake time, same cake channel. And Jill and I have some hijinks afoot for next week on Quilt Nerding, so hope you'll be able to check into that. So I'm going to let you guys go, and I hope that, yeah, I hope you have a good weekend, and I will see you guys very soon. Mwah! And thank you so much to all the resubs today. You guys are the best. Mwah.